The air on the complete other side of Ophis did not breathe. It choked. It was a noxious, heavy atmosphere that contrasted sharply where Jaida, Winona, and Francine had found themselves. Here, the celestial sky of Nebula was entirely smothered, concealed beneath a churning, blackening blanket of storm clouds that stretched to the horizon. Below, in gray-green light, stood an industrial graveyard. Rust was the dominant color, and steel the only architecture. Amidst the ruined framework stood a hulking, terrible wraith statue, this one's hands outstretched in an offering akin to the other. This being was humanoid as well, but instead of a large hat, it sported a large head with a visible brain. From the statue's palms, a violent shimmering portal tore open in the air, an orange vortex that screamed rather with power. Without warning, the vortex expelled two figures. Voyd and Toonie erupted from the tear like bullets being fired. They flew in tight, messy arcs, their cries swallowed by the wind, before they collided hard with the ground. Voyd hit first, a heavy thunk echoing off the iron wreckage. His body bounced and slid across a treacherous mix of rain-slicked grass and jagged concrete. Beside him, Toonie landed head first in a deep patch of oily mud, his legs flailing uselessly. With a groan, Voyd slammed a palm against the wet soil, pushing himself up. Water streamed off his body, and he instinctively retracted his helmet, letting the accumulated water spill onto the muck. He coughed, a rattling, wheezing sound, and viciously shook his head, focusing on drawing the cold, rusty air back into his lungs. By glory. He managed, tasting decay and metal. His self-healing ability was already working, knitting tears in his skin and dulling the ache of the impact. Next to him, Toonie finally wrestled himself free from the mud. He got back upright and indulged in a full-body shudder, shaking himself violently like a regular dog, misting Voyd with a spray of cold water and mud. "Oh, that hurt," Toonie gruffed, rubbing the back of his head with his paw. Voyd turned, concern momentarily overriding his shock. "You alright, Toonster?" Toonie nodded curtly. The immediate pain was fading, replaced by a growing sense of disorientation. They both slowly turned, ignoring the hammering rain, watching the jagged orange portal flicker, shrink, and finally dissolve into nothing. The silence that followed was broken only by the drip of rain and the howl of the wind. "Jaida? Jaida?" Voyd's voice was sudden and sharp as he scanned the structures. "Jaida!" he repeated, louder, panic beginning to prickle at the edges of his calm. Toonie started searching too, his tail stiffening into a rigid point. "Winona? Francine! Coco! Ellie! Toby?" Voyd added, breathing heavily now, every second ticking louder than the last. They took in their surroundings. It was a rather imposing landscape. It was the skeletal remains of a vast railway yard, an industrial graveyard littered with rusting tracks that led nowhere. Old buildings leaned precariously, shattered relics of a forgotten era. Some were merely skeletal frames, their steel bones exposed. Others had surrendered completely, dissolving in the piles of machinery, discarded metal, and endless arrays of scrap. Old train cars lay scattered about. The wind blew through these broken frames like a mournful, hollow sound that seemed to mock their desperate cries for their friends. "Where are they, man?" Toonie asked, the confusion in his voice edged with fear. Voyd closed his eyes, focusing inward. He reached out with his heart, utilizing his soulbind. For a brief instant, his body emanated a low, pulsating purple light as he strained the connection. He reopened his eyes, the purple fading. "Damn it, just as I figured," he said, the words strained. That was a multi-vortice passage. Too much power, too much space. We've been split up. Tooney's jaw dropped. What? That's insane! What the heck are we gonna do? Voyd didn't hear the question. He was already processing the limited information he had. I can sense Jaida, he stated, pointing a rigid finger vaguely towards the path ahead. She's on the other side of wherever we are. Not sure about the others yet, but Jaida's signature is strong. Voyd's focus tightened into a fearful expression. We have to find them as soon as possible. It's dangerous out there. If they're not there, they could get hurt. They could die. I can't let them. His voice broke, the thought of losing them snapping the thread of composure. I can't. He began to hyperventilate, his vision blurring as the memory of past loss rushed forward like a tidal wave. Voyd! Hey! Voyd! Tooney lurched forwards, his movements quick and decisive, grabbing the spark by his shoulders. He forced Voyd to look at him. Voyd's blue eyes were wide, strained, and filled with a raw, agonizing worry. It's going to be okay. It's going to be alright. We'll find them. Tooney's voice was firm, a wave of assurance in the tempest of panic. Voyd gently lowered his gaze, struggling for control. I know. I just don't know what I would do if I lost any of you. Voyd sadly stated. Tooney's ears flattened. Voyd, he began, but the spark was already pulling away, his mind locking down on the mission. This time, Voyd stated, his voice low, now flat, and infused with cold resolution. It has to be different. He looked ahead, towards the labyrinth of junk and ruined steel that stretched into the gloom. Let's go. I'm sensing Jaida in this direction. With that, he trudged forwards, stepping over a collapsed railing and into the desolate Badlands. Tooney followed close behind. The teal rain was cold and insistent, driving down in sheets that soaked the ground and hammered against the exposed skin of the two boys. Voyd and Tooney moved through the skeletal remains of the massive rail yard. The teal-gray mist clung low to the twisted metal and rusted tracks, obscuring the far reaches of the ruin and amplifying the oppressive silence. They made their way over mountains of shattered iron and hurtled past the hollow carcasses of structures, all the while feeling a growing sense of unease. I wonder what this place was used for, Tooney muttered, kicking a fragment of a broken rail piece. The sound it made was hollow and dead. Voyd, gazing around, had to hop awkwardly over a massive, eroded metal wheel half sunk into the muck. It's definitely some kind of railway station. Or at least it used to be. Reminds me of the subway system that was back on Salvaheim. Tooney squinted at him, the rain momentarily blurring his vision as they trudged along side by side. Salvaheim's subway system looked like a scrapyard? Voyd finally cracked a faint, fleeting smile and shook his head. What? No, of course not, he assured, the smile instantly fading. Well, it probably does now. It was large and vast like this in a big field. If I were to take a guess, this place was probably used for resource management, given the sheer size of the tracks. The spark then bent low as they came across a large sheet, using his shoulder to brace against the metal plate so Tooney could clamber past. The surrounding area felt unnaturally desolate, a scar upon the land. In the distance, towering mountains full of dark jungles and forests looked upon them like looming titans of blue. So, what do you make of Jaida's mom being, Tooney asked, as Voyd followed after, shifting the conversation abruptly to the secondary matter weighing heavily on their minds. They reached a partially collapsed maintenance building, blocking their narrow path. Thankfully, there was an opening in the wall. Voyd vaulted onto a stack of crumpled oil drums, pulling himself onto the upper floor of the rotting structure. With a heave, he turned, offering a hand to Toonie, who took it in a strong grip. With a grunt, Voyd hauled the wolf into the building, where a ruined hallway led to another broken hole on the far side. Voyd tapped the glowing orange heart embedded in his chest, creating a faint light source in the gloom. He thought on Toonie's question. To tell you the truth, I have no earthly idea. I mean, spirits and ghosts do exist, Toonie, but something like that is... I've never seen anything like it. He trailed off, staring down the ruined passage. I just can't explain it, Voyd stated as he began the walk. Do you think it could be an illusion? A fake made by the WRAITHS? Toonie inquired, watching the light flicker across Voyd's worried face. Voyd shook his head firmly. No. What I saw when she looked into my eyes was horrifyingly real. Toonie cocked his head as they continued marching down the hallway, navigating piles of debris and splintered wood. Are you referring when she went all poltergeist on you? Voyd nodded again. I don't know what she did to me, but I felt her soul in pain. I heard the scream of agony right in my head. I can't imagine how or why, but she isn't here out of her own free will. They leapt out of the broken wall piece and back into the relentless rain, now surrounded by dozens of rusted abandoned rail carts. That I know for certain. Voyd finished, his tone weary. Are you suggesting that maybe they're using her somehow? Toonie asked, scanning the rail cars for movement. Voyd paused before answering, looking heavy and with thought. I'm starting to fear that may be the case. The way she was acting when her helmet broke. That was the raw face of a mother fearing for her child's safety. I would know because I've seen it. The last few words settled heavily between them. Although Voyd didn't directly say it, Toonie knew the story of how he escaped Salvaheim. He didn't speak on the notion. I don't know the nature of it, but if I were to take a guess, they're utilizing Amelia, probably as some kind of lure for Jaida, to draw her to. Toonie finished the thought, his voice flat. Ornog. Voyd expelled a shaky breath, hunching slightly against the cold. By Matira, he muttered. Toonie, after a long wave of silence, spoke up. Should we change the subject? Voyd looked at him, worry still etched deeply into his features, but managed a slight nod. For the time being, that would be nice. He deliberately looked away from the rusting junk, scanning the desolate landscape stretching towards the dark mountains. In the distance, cutting through the heavy gray mist, he saw something shocking. A rather large facility that looked like a train station, miraculously whole. And then, impossibly, a train left this station. It was a sleek, humming machine, ancient yet propelled by brilliant orange cosmic energy, looking akin to a modern bullet train, yet lined with gleaming gold and alien metals. It carried several carts of metal, gliding silently on intact tracks. Look! Voyd pointed. Maybe we can use a train to gain some better footing. Toonie eyed him, skepticism pulling at his brow. You want to hijack an alien train? Voyd managed a genuine smile. Would you rather walk in the open rain, or exposed here? He asked. Fair point, Toonie conceded, placing his hands on his hips. However, I am about 40% wolf. I can actually manage walking on my own for a good few hours. Voyd tilted his head, his focus momentarily shifting from the train. Now that you mention it, I have been meaning to ask you something, Voyd began. Does it ever bother you having to be around Toby? Toonie lifted his head, utterly confused. No? Why do you ask? Voyd stared. You're both dogs. Isn't that, like, awkward when you have to walk him on a leash or feed him? Toonie simply stared, his face perplexed, the momentary absurdity overriding the gravity of their situation. Let's, change the subject again. Yeah, okay. Voyd quickly replied, already regretting the question. However, before they could initiate a new topic, a sound ripped through the stillness. It wasn't the soft hiss of the rain, or the rumble of a train, but a metallic thrum that seemed to shake the very ground beneath their feet. From the heart of the downpour, a gargantuan shape revealed itself. A machine, no question about it. Yet it possessed a predatory grace. It was a tripod-like mechanism, towering to the height of a telephone pole, its metallic form casting an imposing shadow even through the storm. 3 long, spindly mechanical legs, gleaming with the wet sheen of gold and riveted steel, bore its immense weight. Each leg was segmented, jointed with what looked like razor-sharp daggers and polished metal shards, culminating in massive 3-clawed feet. The interior of these claws pulsated with a malevolent, faint orange glow, like embers deep within a fading fire. Cosmic energy. Its upper body was a grotesque culmination of engineered parts, forged into a beetle shell-like appearance. A singular lens, shaped like a spotlight, rested in this body, radiating a beam of orange light that cut through the dismal landscape. From its sides and underbelly, 4 smaller mechanical appendages jutted out, 2 claws and 2 whirring buzzsaws, their teeth glinting even through the rain. Then from behind the first, more monstrosities emerged, like an industrial flock materializing from the storm. 7 of these metallic titans scattered across the rail yard grounds, their glowing lenses sweeping the wreckage-strewn terrain. What the? Toonie breathed, his voice a ragged whisper, barely audible above the drumming rain and the distant, unsettling hum of the machines. Voyd, his face a mask of tense determination, gripped Toonie's shoulder, yanking him back. They stumbled, finding themselves pressed against the cold, rusting wall of a discarded train carriage. Their backs pressed against the flaking paint, eyes wide, breathing stalled, hearts thundering a frantic roar against their ribs. What are those things? Toonie whispered again, his voice tight with panic, his gaze darting between Voyd and the metallic horrors. Voyd slowly, cautiously peered over the edge of their makeshift cover. To his surprise, the machines weren't immediately hostile. Instead, they began the work. They started collecting and disassembling the vast quantities of discarded metal that littered the forgotten landscape. Their massive claws, although menacing, now acted as tools, lifting and relocating heavy metal parts, twisted sheets of alloy, and broken engines. The buzzsaws were the life, screaming through the dull roar of the storm as they sliced through resistant metals, making the task seem effortless. They seem to be some type of worker drone, Voyd murmured, his voice low. They're collecting scraps. Toonie risked a peek over Voyd's shoulder. The sight was undeniably intriguing, yet scary. These titans were here for salvaging, but why? Then, something else caught their attention. Moving through the field of debris with grace came a creature unlike anything on Earth. A slender blue deer-like being, its hide shimmering faintly, grazing with an almost serene calm. It watched the working machines with an innocent curiosity, seemingly unafraid. Its large, luminous eyes reflected the orange glow of the tripod's lenses. Voyd and Toonie watched, mesmerized by the contrast of fragile life and brutal machinery. Huh. Maybe they aren't dangerous, Voyd considered. But this thought, of course, was a lie. As one of the mechanical machines shifted its gaze, its singular lens fixed on the alien deer, it reacted with a horrifying, lightning-fast speed. Without warning, it raised one of its spindly legs high into the air and then brought it down with a pulverizing force. A sickening crunch muffled by the rain reached their ears, followed by the immediate, chilling silence of what had been life. The tall, rain-slicked grasses swallowed the resulting carnage, leaving only a lingering sense of dread. Voyd and Toonie slammed back against the train cart, their movements jerky and desperate. Their eyes, once wide with observation, now gleamed with raw terror. They exchanged a look, before their gazes flickered towards the dilapidated train station in the distance. Voyd, you're used to these kinds of things, right? What do we do? Toonie's voice was barely a whisper, edged with desperation. More machines were appearing on the horizon, their numbers steadily increasing. Voyd strained his eyes, calculating. Normally, I'd go on the offensive, Voyd stated, his voice tight. Strike fast before they know what hit them. Unfortunately, we have about 6 or 7 more of these things out there, and... He paused, eyeing Toonie nervously. You have no means of fighting back. Toonie flinched, but understood. Voyd was a formidable fighter. Toonie knew this well, but even he had limits. Toonie, for all his spirit, was no warrior. Okay, our best bet is to sneak our way to the train station. Voyd continued, his tone shifting to a more strategic one. Hop into a car and get out of here before they notice. He reached up, a soft whirring sound accompanying the activation of his helmet. Okay, so like those spy movies we watch. Gotcha. Toonie replied, a nervous nod shaking his head. He pulled the hood of his jacket up then, attempting to make himself smaller, less noticeable. Voyd nodded in return, his gaze hardening. Stay low and close. Toonie shook his head, a flash of stubborn loyalty in his eyes. Hey, whatever happens, I'm by your side. I know I may not have crazy superpowers like you, but we're in this together, Voyd. A brief hesitation crossed Voyd's face, before he gave a firm, reluctant nod. He respected Toonie's courage, even if it was sometimes reckless. The two then initiated a handshake, before slowly, meticulously, they began the move. The duo crouched low, their forms almost swallowed by the driving rain and the shifting mist. Every movement was deliberate, silent. They slinked across the soaked field, using the tall, swaying grass as their primary cover, all while the colossal machines continued their relentless work. The rain, their only companion, lashed down, turning the ground into slick mud, making the trek even more challenging. Suddenly, one of the tripods, its glowing lens sweeping the area, paused. It turned its massive body, its mechanical legs grinding softly, and began to march directly towards their position. Alarm bells screamed in Voyd's mind. Without a moment's hesitation, he wrapped an arm around Toonie and pulled him close. In the same fluid motion, he shot out his other arm, his grip latching onto a discarded hunk of twisted metal. With a powerful surge, he launched them both, a blur against the teal, catapulting them behind another larger train cart. The colossal machine stomped past mere moments later, its heavy footfalls shaking the ground directly where they had been. They pressed themselves flat against the cold, vibrating metal of their new hiding spot, unseen, unheard, their hearts hammering a frantic drumbeat against their ribs. Man, if only Jaida were here, Toonie whispered once they were sure the immediate danger had passed. She'd be able to warp us to the station with ease. Voyd grunted, his focus entirely on the path ahead. This process became a tense, repeated dance. They utilized every available piece of cover. The rustling train carts, piles of old rubble, even burying themselves deeper into the thick, wet grass as the monstrous tripods lumbered past, their orange lights constantly scanning. The train station was now agonizingly close, its entrance promising escape. Just about there, Voyd huffed, his scarf whipping around violently by a sudden gust of wind. But as the words left his lips, a sharp crack ripped through the air. Tooney had stepped on an old railway track, the ancient wood snapping under his foot with an alarming sound. Voyd's head snapped towards him, his orange battle mask visor narrowing. Tooney cursed a string of rapid Spanish under his breath. The sound resonated. Two of the nearest machines, their heads swiveling with an unnerving mechanical whir, immediately turned, their glowing lenses fixed on the source of the noise, and with an unhurried yet terrifyingly determined gait, they began stomping their way over. "Tooney, get low!" Voyd hissed, his voice an urgent command as he dove behind the nearest train cart, pulling himself as flat as possible. Tooney, momentarily stunned, took the command literally, scrambling to hide underneath the very hunk of metal. The two machines were upon them within minutes, their mechanical legs thudding heavily against the saturated soil. They scanned the shattered railway, their orange beams dissecting the spot where the wood had been broken, before methodically beginning to search the area. Claws ripped through piles of discarded scrap metal, flinging rusting debris aside. Buzzsaw's whirred, carving open potential hiding spots with brutal efficiency. Then, one of the machines spoke. Its voice was automated, synthesized, an eerie calm monotone that seemed utterly out of sync with its destructive form.
All Ophis residents are required to give up their life essence for War Dog's return. Do not resist. It is a blessing. Do not resist. It is a blessing.
Voyd's brow furrowed beneath his mask. "Ophis? We're on Ophis?" he muttered, the name sending panic into his soul. The machines, however, grew increasingly impatient, their movements becoming more aggressive. Large carts and bins were smacked aside, sending showers of sparks and bent metal into the rain-filled air, all while Voyd and Tooney watched, pressed tightly to their hiding spots, their nerves stretched to breaking point. "They're gonna find us! What do we do?" Tooney whispered to Voyd, his voice trembling, as the machine's glowing lenses slowly began to turn towards their precise hiding place. Voyd took a deep, steadying breath, a decision forming rapidly in his mind. "You said you've been working out, right?" Voyd asked. Tooney nodded. "Well, I hope you didn't skip leg day, Toonster," Voyd said, his voice strained as he pulled two sleek round grenades from out of his chest plate. With a sharp click, he armed the grenades. Then, abandoning all form of stealth, Voyd exposed himself, launching the two spherical devices with practiced precision. They arced through the rain-streaked air, striking the halting machines squarely on their spindly legs. Before the automatons could even register the oncoming threat, a brilliant burst of sapphire light detonated. The concussive force tore through the machine's legs, shattering their structural integrity and sending them toppling to the ground with a resonating crash of metal and sparking circuits. The inferno was massive, a blinding nova of blue energy that momentarily lit up the entire desolate landscape. And above all, it was loud. A deafening roar tore through the storm as two fallen robots began to blare a piercing alarm, a wailing siren that echoed across the field, signaling their distress. Every other machine in the area, the robotic heads snapping up, immediately turned their glowing lenses towards the scene of the explosion. They began to move, a relentless tide of mechanical destruction, leaving Voyd and Tooney standing exposed, momentarily frozen in the surge of panic. "Run! Run now!" Voyd cried, slapping Tooney's shoulder with a force that spun him around, setting them both sprinting for their lives. And all I wanted to do was perform with my friends! This sucks! Toonie howled, his voice a desperate scream, lost to the wind and rain, as he powered across the uneven ground with his legs burning. Welcome to my life, Toonster! Voyd yelled back, his own breath coming in ragged gasps, as the heavy metal footfalls and guttural robotic roars erupted from behind them, gaining speed. Summoning 2 glowing Nova runes, Voyd twisted, throwing them without breaking stride. They struck the nearest pursuing machine, causing it to stumble violently, its buzzsaws wildly swinging in a desperate attempt to regain balance. Oh, by Matera! Voyd cried out, finally grasping the sheer number of pursuers, a relentless horde chasing them like metallic zombies. Stumbling backwards momentarily, Voyd opened his chest plate, unleashing a volley of tiny rockets. They streaked through the air, detonating amongst the horde and impacting the ground, creating a series of smaller explosions that momentarily disrupted the machines, buying precious seconds. As the automatons stumbled over one another in the chaos, Voyd and Toonie ascended a flight of old, crumbling stone stairs, their legs burning, their muscles screaming. The large, rain-battered doors of the train station loomed ahead, a final beacon of hope. With a last desperate lunge, they burst through them, slamming themselves into the relative safety of the station's interior. Both Voyd and Toonie scrambled upright. Before them was an old, rusted system of trains, loaded with carts of metal and machinery, all leading to the same direction. It all made sense. These machines scavenged parts and put them in the carts. But why, Voyd thought. He focused his mind. He could sense that the trains were leading in the same direction as Jaida. It couldn't be any more perfect, but they had to move. From behind, they could hear the machines growing closer, their heavy titanic mechanical footsteps growing heavier and heavier. They then spotted a train already beginning to move ahead. Go! Go, 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 go! Voyd cried as he shoved Toonie forwards. The machines began to break in, their buzzsaws cutting through the roof, their mechanical roars erupting like a lion's cry. The 2 bolted for the train, legs pumping, hearts pounding. The machines, at last with terrifying strength, broke in. The roof was torn away, metal claws reached in. Grabbing Toonie again, Voyd shot his arm out and took hold of the train's outer support rail. With all of his strength, Voyd pulled them aboard, landing on the rail balcony side. As they hit the cold, wet metal, all the machines broke into the train station, toppling over the train's back carts of the main vehicle itself. Once out of the station, the train blasted ahead, out and away from whatever they had just encountered. Jesus! Toonie cried out with shock and relief, while Voyd just retracted his mask and breathed. The rail yard and robots were lost to the mist, as they, alone on a single piece of train, blasted ahead into Ophis, safe, on edge. The metallic groan of the train's door was a jarring counterpoint to the rush of wind as Voyd wrenched it open. Inside, the control deck awaited, an unsettling collection of steel, gold, and blinking lights, utterly devoid of a living presence. Coast is clear, Voyd announced, his voice raspy with exhaustion. He and Toonie stepped into the humming silence of the cabin. While the forward section bristled with dormant consoles and screens, the back half offered a small, unexpectedly soft lounge area. A pair of cushioned seats, designed in forest green, beckoned them beside a wide panoramic window. With twin sighs that seemed to deflate the last remnants of tension, Voyd and Toonie collapsed on the opposite seats, sinking into the soft embrace of the cushions. Toonie groaned dramatically, pressing his paws over his eyes. Dude, he muttered, his words thick with disbelief. What the hell was all that? Voyd leaned his head back against the cushion, his gaze fixed on the stormy landscape rushing past. Rain slicked the glass, distorting the ancient towering trees and mist-shrouded peaks of Ophis. An average Novasun scuffle, as I like to call it. He replied, a cold knot twisting in his gut, a relentless ache that had haunted him since they'd been separated. All he could think about were the others, especially Jaida. "You guys shouldn't have followed us," he added, his voice dropping to a near whisper. He looked utterly defeated, shoulders slumped, the vibrant orange heart on his chest plate seeming duller than usual. Tooney lowered his paws, his brow furrowed in concern, but a small, resolute smile soon touched his muzzle. "Perhaps," he conceded, his ears twitching. "But we stick together, no matter what." His smile widened, a beacon of stubborn loyalty. "Sure, I'm scared out of my wits, but come on, you and Jaida managed to save the universe. Surely this isn't as bad as it seems." Voyd's grim stare remained locked on the world outside, the dense jungle a blur of green and grays. The immense weight of Tooney's words, intended as encouragement, felt instead like a crushing burden. "Voyd?" Tooney prompted, his voice softer now. Voyd finally tore his gaze away from the window, meeting Tooney's anxious eyes with a soft sigh. I'm sorry to be on this again, but Voyd stuttered. "I have this fear. This reoccurring fear that..." The spark trailed off, swallowing hard, his knuckles tightening as he clenched his hand. "Fear of what?" Tooney pressed gently. Voyd blinked slowly, his eyes distant. "I'm gonna lose you all. You, Jaida, everyone." He returned his gaze to the landscape, the rain mirroring the storm within him. "It's still hard to believe, that despite everything, despite all that I went through, I managed to find you all. I fear when I wake up in the morning, all of this would reveal itself to be a dream." Tooney's ears flattened. His tail, usually a vibrant swaying mess, gave a nervous tremble. "I see him in my dreams every night, Tooney," Voyd confessed on, his voice hushed. "I see the Red Death. I see Lotus. I hear his voice. Even when I know he's gone, what he did to me lingers even when I know all is okay." Voyd looked back at the wolf, his gaze filled with sorrow. "You and the others being in a place like this has just put me on edge, Tooney. What we just faced, I can't imagine what else is waiting for us. For them. We don't even know if the others are together, scattered, or just on their own." Voyd buried his face in his hands, his luminous eyes dimming, the light within them flickering. "Ophis, the true kingdom of the WRAITHS. We're stranded here, and I don't have a plan on getting back. I should, but I don't." Voyd's voice cracked, a tremor running through him. Tooney reached out, his paw hovering uncertainly. "Voyd," he began. "Jaida's in danger. If they find her, they're going to kill her. My light. They're going after my light, Tooney. Using her mom, our friends. They can't. If I'm not there, I can't protect them." Voyd's words tumbled out, a frantic, disjointed stream of anxieties. "Voyd," Tooney repeated, his voice firmer, noticing with a jolt that the usual stark white in Voyd's eyes was beginning to darken, dimming to a deep, unsettling shade of black. I can't live through it again. I can't lose my loved ones again, Tooney. I can't. Voyd chanted, the words escalating into a desperate gasp. A panic attack. "Voyd!" Tooney shouted, sudden sharpness cutting through Voyd's spiraling panic. Voyd flinched, snapping his head up, his frenzied gaze finally focusing on the wolf. Tooney offered a small, sincere smile, his eyes radiating an unwavering warmth. "Dude, it's gonna be okay," he assured, reaching out and gently placing a paw on Voyd's clenched hand. The touch was grounding, a physical anchor in the storm of Voyd's mind. It's okay to be scared. I can't imagine what that must feel like. Believe me, I know I'm smiling now, but I'm just as freaked as you. Toonie's sincerity seemed to chip away at Voyd's rigid tension, though his eyes still held a lingering wildness. But if there's one thing I know for a fact, Toonie continued, squeezing Voyd's hand slightly, it's that we will get through this. You will get through this. You're the strongest guy I know, both physically and in your heart. Toonie stated. You got a strong heart, man. Toonie boasted on, his paw moving to lightly poke the glowing orange heart emblem on Voyd's chest plate. We're gonna get out of this. Together. As a team. Toonie's earnest assurance finally coaxed a small, fragile smile from Voyd. It's hard to come by people like you, Toonster. You've got a strong heart, too. Toonie nodded, a flush creeping onto his cheeks. That's the perk of being the friend group caboose. You're also a natural service dog. I know that doesn't make sense, and that's because I'm just rambling. Voyd eyed him gently, a warmth returning to his own gaze. You're not a caboose, Toonie, he stated, his voice soft but firm. You're the engine. Toonie's smile faltered, a shy shake of his head betraying his embarrassment. Sure, man. I mean it, Voyd insisted, his tone unwavering as the train thundered onwards. Stop, I'm really not. Toonie leaned back, trying to deflect the sincere compliment. Voyd perked up, a flash of his usual determination returning. I'm serious, you... Ah! A sudden sharp wince cut Voyd off. He squeezed his eyes shut, a soft... Ugh! Escaping his lips, as he began to vigorously rub his temples. Toonie's playful demeanor vanished instantly, replaced by sharp concern. Whoa, bro, you okay? He asked, leaning forwards as Voyd rapidly blinked, releasing a small startled gasp. Yeah, my eyes just stung there for a minute, Voyd stated, shaking his head as if to clear it. Must be the rain or the environment messing with me, he reasoned, forcing a reassuring smile. You sure? Toonie's voice was laced with suspicion. He could have sworn, in that fleeting moment of discomfort, he saw the faintest, most unsettling hint of teal-green bleed into the vibrant blue of Voyd's irises. The anomaly was gone as quickly as it appeared, leaving Toonie with a prickling unease and wondering if he was seeing things. Positive. Point still stands. You're the engine. You gotta have that confidence, man. Voyd boasted, deflecting the concern. Toonie let out a long, suffering sigh, a flicker of worry still lingering in his gaze. Sure, whatever you say. He settled back, watching the rain-streaked jungle pass by, the image of that fleeting green tint stubbornly refusing to leave his mind as the automated train carried them deeper into the heart of Ophis.